Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by Crown Royal. This season, Crown Royal is supporting the local communities that serve us off the field. For more, visit at kickoffwithcrown.com. Big story developing in the NFL this morning already is the Broncos moving on from head coach Vic Fangio following the 28-24 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs on Saturday. Broncos wasting no time moving on from their head coach of the past 3 seasons. Fangio finishing 19-30 over that campaign. Broncos were 7-10 this season. They did get off to a good start with Teddy Bridgewater, but Bridgewater suffering concussion. So they were 7-7 with Teddy Bridgewater, 0-3 without him, and the Broncos missed the playoffs one more time. For more on this story, we now bring in our CBS Sports NFL insider, the best in the business, Jason La Canfora. So, JLC, no surprise, I think, at this point that the Broncos moving on from Fangio. Where do they go next, and what's the latest development there in Denver with Fangio now gone?
Yeah, look, when they brought in George Paton last year as their new general manager, you knew that this was a big year for Vic Fangio, and he'd have to really win over that regime. With everything about himself, his demeanor, his personality, and then obviously the results. And it never really looked like a long-term match. I reported yesterday that Fangio would be relieved of his duties. They did that today. Dan Quinn is a name I have heard consistently now about this job for several weeks. Certainly they'll cast a wide net. You know, George Paton was in Minnesota when Leslie Frazier was the head coach there. If you're looking for someone from the defensive side of the ball who has a completely different persona and completely different communication style than Vic Fangio, that would be Leslie Frazier. You know, Nathaniel Hackett, someone from the Green Bay Packers who they may want to get an audience with as well. If, say, you maybe wanted to make a pitch for Aaron Rodgers, who I tend to think will stay in Green Bay, but if you brought Nathaniel Hackett over there, would that provide some creature comforts for Aaron Rodgers if he did decide he still wants out? But if you maybe handicap this early, and it's very early, I would say expect them to make a pitch for Dan Quinn.
Makes a lot of sense what he's done with that Cowboys defense, and would inherit a great defense, and clearly finding the quarterback is hopefully the solution to that Broncos team because the offense has a lot of nice young players in place. JLC, we know that's not going to be the only coaching change that happens heading into 2022. You're reporting about a lot of coaching changes that could be coming as early as tomorrow. We know what Monday typically is, the day after the season ends. So talk about the upcoming coaching changes that we could be looking at.
Sure. Well, there's two others that I would say are imminent that I would classify in the same way I did with the Broncos and Fangio, that it was over. It was just a matter of when they would announce it. Matt Nagy, I'm told the Bears are preparing for a head coach search. Now, that could also include a search for a new team president, a new general manager. That family's being pulled in a lot of different directions right now and have a lot that they need to sort out. But regardless, Matt Nagy coming back for 2022 as their head coach is not in the cards, and Minnesota will be moving on from Mike Zimmer as well. I'm told he sort of had a mandate there. Hey, we've spent a lot of money on this team. We've tried to give you everything you need. We nearly fired you a couple years ago, and you got into the playoffs. We need to see some January success. We need to see how we're measured against the best of the best. Minnesota didn't even reach that point. Their longtime GM, Rick Spielman, I expect to stay there, perhaps in a little different capacity, maybe overseeing a little bit differently, but certainly the Vikings will be looking for some new people in charge. And Houston, there's a lot of internal discussion the closer we've got to the end of the regular season about moving on from David Culley after just 1 year. Seattle under new ownership. You know, Jody Allen, is she going to move forward with a 70-year-old head coach? Is she going to try to mend fences with Russell Wilson, or is she going to say the only way for us to truly get better long-term is to turn the page on that era? It's certainly a possibility. The Raiders, obviously, they're still in play for the playoffs. And if they get in and do some damage, certainly that'll resonate with Mark Davis. But Rich Bisaccia, it's fair to say, as an interim head coach, is sort of coaching for his life here. Jim Harbaugh would be the name I'd watch most closely if the Raiders do, in fact, make a move.
Yeah, let's stay with Jim Harbaugh there because, you know, drawing a lot of interest in your reporting about that several teams are looking at Harbaugh. So is that the direction that you think the Raiders go? Is that the direction maybe the Broncos now go? You know, where do you think Jim Harbaugh, I'm sure he's going to have his choice based on his track record in the NFL and clearly at Michigan about where he wants to coach next. Where do you think Harbaugh ends up if, in fact, he does end up in the NFL?
Look, he's certainly letting it be known that he could be wooed with the right possibility back to the NFL. Doesn't mean that will materialize, but certainly he's got strong ties to the Raiders organization. He began his NFL coaching career there as a quarterbacks coach. He did a lot of damage in a positive way in the Bay Area, whether it was with the 49ers or with Stanford, right while Mark Davis was sitting there seeing it all as the eventual owner of the Oakland Raiders, who we now know are in Las Vegas. So yes, I think he would be at the top of Mark Davis's wish list. Remember, he just had a guy in there than John Gruden, who the coach and that personality was the face of the franchise, more so than even any player. The Chicago Bears, Harbaugh played there before. There's a lot of internal discussion within, again, the McCaskey family about maybe bringing some people back into the fold who were a part of things in Chicago when they were an elite franchise. I'm not sure that's exactly where Harbaugh would want to be, but it's a possibility. And Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, is maybe the biggest donor to the University of Michigan. I think the business school there at Ann Arbor is named after him. He has been a huge advocate, supporter, champion of Jim Harbaugh for a long time. If Jim Harbaugh were to leave his alma mater to seriously entertain NFL possibilities, I have a hard time believing Stephen Ross would not at least want to have a conversation or two about that, even if he were not otherwise necessarily planning on moving on from Brian Flores.
Yeah, that would certainly be one of the bigger surprises if they do move on from Brian Flores. But like you said, it's certainly been something that Stephen Ross has been enamored with in terms of Jim Harbaugh. The Raiders, going back to that situation, clearly moving on from John Gruden. We know that John Gruden and Mike Mayock were kind of tied together. And so Mayock might be somebody that has to look for a new job if Mark Davis goes in a different direction. And you're reporting that Jim Dorsey could be somebody that the Raiders are looking at as a top candidate to fill that GM role if, in fact, Mayock is no longer part of the organization.
Yeah, based on conversations with a number of general managers into the weekend, there's definitely an expectation in the industry that even if Mark Davis doesn't look for a new head coach, that he's going to overhaul personnel. They've had a series of first-round picks who have not panned out, and some of them have now, serious legal problems, other things going on outside of football. It just hasn't been good enough. And Mike Mayock, there was a point in time last spring where John Gruden was thinking about seriously making a move. So yeah, John Dorsey, who did a lot of good work building with Andy Reid that Chiefs team that has become a perennial monster in that same division, that's not lost on Mark Davis. It's rare that someone in the NFL has 3 or more chances to be a GM of an NFL team, but John Dorsey is certainly a name I've heard connected to that Raiders opening once it opens up.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if the Raiders do give Mayock another opportunity without Gruden there to see how he does maybe running a draft class. But clearly, if they're going to clean house, why not clean house and get rid of everybody to replace that previous regime? Let's tie this all into the news today, JLC, because you're reporting that Vic Fangio, I think to no one's surprise, will be a hot name for a defensive coordinator. And the Jaguars, their general manager, Trent Baalke, could be looking at maybe a pairing of Bill O'Brien coming in as the head coach with Vic Fangio as a defense coordinator. Just talk about that, and then just talk about Fangio's opportunity to find a job as a defense coordinator as well.
Yeah, I mean, I even reported a few weeks back, because again, this Fangio thing was coming in terms of him not being back, that there were a lot of young coaches, guys who think they'll get their first opportunity to be an NFL head coach, who are already reaching out to Fangio. There was already a bit of a behind-the-scenes bidding war to figure out who can really land this guy, because he is looked at as that caliber of a defensive coordinator. He has so much institutional knowledge, so much experience. That's someone you really would want to be the right-hand man for a young head coach. Now, in San Francisco, when Fangio was there under Harbaugh, Trent Baalke was the GM. Baalke's now the GM in Jacksonville. And while there was an ugly falling out there, strange things happen in this league. Heck, I'm old enough to remember Urban Meyer getting hired as an NFL head coach. So, yes, Trent Baalke is advocating for, with ownership, that, hey, if some of these other candidates don't want to take this job here because they think I'm a problem, that's fine. But I got a guy in Bill O'Brien who won back-to-back division titles in this very division not that long ago, who's maybe going to win a national championship with Alabama on Monday. He'll take the job with me, and he has a resume. And I think I might be able to bring in Fangio to run the defense. So how would that sound? We got a guy on offense who's been a head coach before, a guy on defense who's been a head coach before. That would sort of be the antithesis of Urban Meyer, who had never done anything in this league on any level. Do I think that would work from a personality standpoint, from a human relations standpoint? No, I don't. I think it sounds kind of crazy to me, but so did Urban Meyer. So Yeah, there's a lot going on in Jacksonville. You know, they've talked to Kellen Moore and Byron Leftwich and the younger sort of generation of offensive guys. But I tend to think Shad Khan's going to want somebody who's done the job before, given some of the recent failings. So stay tuned. If Trent Baalke stays in charge, and it sounds like he's going to, even with these protests going on at the game in Jacksonville today, if he gets his way, I think you would see Bill O'Brien and Vic Fangio.
Stay tuned, the most appropriate thing you could say, because a lot is about to happen in the NFL following the Week 18 action in terms of coaching changes, certainly some general manager changes, and no one will have us covered better than Jason La Canfora. JLC, enjoy the games today. I am sure we will be talking to you at some point either later today or maybe even on Monday following the coaching changes around the NFL. Make sure you check out 60 Minutes today. First time we're promoting that, but fun conversation coming up with Justin Tucker. What goes on inside the mind of the NFL kicker? 60 Minutes interviews the Ravens' Justin Tucker, who could be perhaps the greatest NFL kicker there ever was. Tonight, only on 60 Minutes, 7 Eastern on CBS.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.